I'll just like to say that I'm delighted to be involved in the City of Dublin Winter Solstice Creative Connections for a Brighter Future panel discussion and candlelight ceremony. This is a creative connection panel discussion, and we will explore and celebrate the 2020 Winter Solstice and the role of the arts and culture to promote creative connections and cultural diversity into the future. Themes for discussions will focus on holistic health and well-being, a creative exploration of the winter solstice and its relevance in today's changing world, and an exploration and celebration of ancient traditions with current cultural practices in Ireland and globally. We are delighted to have you all, and I'm sure more people will be hopping on as time takes by. We are delighted to have you join us as we explore the unique challenges currently being faced by individuals, communities, artists, and citizens, and how we can use different cultural and social traditions to build hope and creative alliances into the future, open up newly imagined possibilities, and its socially engaged alliances in the post-pandemic world. A little bit about myself. I what some people call an artivist. In my past, I was heavily involved in activism, and I'm still am in some ways. You know, every single movement that there is that fights for equality for everyone, I am in the midst of it. You know, alliance for all people in all the communities. I am a strong supporter of the Black Lives Movement, and I am someone who is passionate about community and about young people. So whatever work or however I engage young people, I engage with them to encourage and support them, to make them better people for the future, active citizens, and who will always be there to fight inequality. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce the first speaker. It's Dr. Karen Ward, a holistic psychotherapist and the co-founder and co-director of Slee on Cree Holistic Center. Hello, Karen.
Hello, Fáilte. Welcome.
Fáilte.
It is a very auspicious occasion. It is the winter solstice. We are currently at the start of the longest night of the year. And I am honored to say a little bit about this great Celtic festival. It was a time when our ancestors, as you can imagine, sat in the dark. There was no electricity, there was no ambient light. So for them, once 4 o'clock came, they were sitting around their fires, but they were also looking up at the stars. And tonight, as we speak, there is something very interesting happening in the planets above us. Jupiter, which has 3 moons, and Saturn, they wheel closer in the sky every 20 years. But every 400 years, they come so close that it is said they look like one star, known as the winter solstice or the Christmas star. And the last time this happened in the heavens was in 1636. But seemingly it was quite a bit like tonight. It was quite dull. It was quite cloudy. So it wasn't really seen as predicted. But way back in the mist of time in the 13th century, in 1226, it was reported that indeed these 2 planets looked like one giant star. And it is said that the Anangu tribe in Australia, our colleagues down in the southern hemisphere who are celebrating their summer solstice, that their tribes and indigenous people have prophesied that this is the great shift, the great reset, they call it, and it is the dawn of the age of Aquarius. Now, I'm sure I'm probably showing my age here, but some of you will remember that great 60s song, The Dawning of the Age of Aquarius. And it was said that this ushers in a time of humanitarianism, philanthropy, increased communication, interesting enough, technology, rebellion. And I'm sure we can agree in the year that we've had a little bit of all of those. So what does this great conjunction at winter solstice now mean for us mere mortals? Well, That is really for each of us to know in our hearts. But it is said that as we sit on the longest night, we get time to reflect on our lives. The sun has reached its lowest point, lowest southerly point here in the Northern Hemisphere. And this morning, and particularly yesterday morning, the dawning rays snaked up the passageway of the great monument that is Newgrange up in County Meath and lit the inner chamber. So for our ancestors who created this 5,000 years ago, before the pyramids of Giza, before the magnificent Stonehenge, they were creating a monument that could honor the active rays of the sun shining in to the womb-like cairn, and it mirrored the equality, the consent, the inclusivity of the people. And I'm sure you'll agree, and crazy as you just mentioned there in your wonderful introduction, that never has it been more important that we humans really look to equality, consent, to working together, to harnessing our holistic energies, not just how we are physically and how we think mentally, but also how energetically and spiritually. So there's body, mind, and soul at play as we come into communication and connection with each other. We're humans. Are we going to make mistakes? Of course we are, but we can reflect, we can come together and make reparation. We can decide, oh, okay, that was a bit crunchy there. What can I do? And so we move forward, that we might have a different way of thinking to each other, but we can understand where somebody else is coming from. We can put ourselves in somebody else's shoes. This morning, I was in an interesting, a sacred site in Dublin, Dolman in the Phoenix Park, and we lit this lantern from the rays of the dawn. Very misty, very ethereal. We then traveled, myself and my husband John, from Sliancree Holistic Centre to the Hill of Tara, where an inauguration site of the Kings of Ireland, but very much in tandem with the goddess Mother Earth. So it was also said that when a man became the King of Ireland, if he was in alignment, if he was in the way of respecting the feminine earth, that there would be peace and prosperity in the land. And then we traveled to Newgrange and we brought our light to that magnificent cairn. And here we are back in Dublin, circling back to Smithfield Square, right in the heart of Dublin City. But this is a time where I invite you at home and all of us here on the panel to shine your light, as they say, so that there is a symbol in your home of hope, of coming together as a tribe of people, not just on this whole island of Ireland, but around the world, the diaspora, wherever you are, so that the longest night of the year gives us time for reflection. It gives us time for stillness in our busy world and the really difficult year we've had. And it gives us a chance to know what is important in our lives. And being in community where we are all equal and we're diverse, but we're inclusive is so, so important. So all that Smashing Times bring to their glorious work and bringing us together for this on this very auspicious occasion is a real tribute to their vision. May your vision for this winter solstice and at this auspicious time of the Great Conjunction augur well. May you dream big for all that is to come. Sha. So this is the time to shine your light. Lift up your candles there. Yes, wonderful. Lovely. And at home, we hope that you have the opportunity to do the same.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Karen, for the wonderful insight and into the tradition of the winter solstice. That was, yeah, I've been doing a lot of research around that, and it's so inspiring, and it's so important to understand the changes that we are going through as human beings in our communities or as individuals, and really check in with ourselves. Next up, we have Phelim James, and I'm just really interested on this next piece. Phelim is an emerging writer from Dublin who recently received funding from the Arts Council of Ireland to complete his debut novel, Flower of Ash. Hello, Phelim.
Hey guys, how's it going? So yeah, I'm Phelim James. I'm a writer from Dublin, an emerging writer. I write fiction and poetry and some other bits, but mainly fiction and poetry. I'm writing Flower of Ash, as Kwesi mentioned, but I am also working on a first collection of poems called I Was a River Lost. So I'm going to speak about the role nature plays in both my poetry and my fiction. So first, personally, I love being in nature. I love exercising, running, cycling, walking in nature. And there's a number of features which attract me to nature. The first is the aesthetic beauty of nature. So be that, you know, a golden beach, or the sea, or just leaves against the sun, or even sunsets. I'm a freak for sunsets. I really love them. That's one of the things that attracts me to them. Also, there's the miracle that's inherent in nature. So all the abundant life and perpetual survival that's contained in nature is really amazing when we stop and think about it, and we stop and actually look at it. It is something we can stop and look at and see. And all the intricate structures and complex interconnectedness is really just a spectacle to behold. Then lastly, there's the inner peace that nature can give you when you're within it or focusing on it. I always find it very peaceful and find my body and mind quieted when I'm in nature. So in fiction first, when I write about nature, it tends to that first feature I mentioned, the aesthetic beauty of nature. But what I'm mainly going to talk about here is poetry, because the relationship between nature and my poetry is a bit more complicated than just describing the beauty of nature. So nature kind of operates as a mirror in my poems. Nature reflects the inner workings of myself and the world, humankind. So the processes of nature, in a way, echo the mental and existential processes we all go through. So I'm going to give an example. One of my poems is called Phoenix Park in Rain, and it's about myself and a friend. It's a real story. Myself and my friend just kind of losing ourselves in the elements of Phoenix Park on a heavily rainy day, and it's my closest friend who I was with, and we kind of just we lost ourselves among the elements. We started acting impulsively, kind of childishly, just throwing out quotes. We climbed up to the Pope's Cross in Phoenix Park, so there's a great view out over the fields there, and we were just screaming quotes, and it was just we lost ourselves, amongst the nature, and that's what the poem is about. And then how I reflected that then in the poem is through the images of the deers, and we encountered some deers along the way, but the images of deers in growing darkness. And so we all strive to be present and to really just be content. And I think animals are way better at that than we are. That's another great thing about nature. And I think the deers, we basically encountered some deers, and instead of running away like they usually do, and it was getting dark, instead of running away like they usually do, they just stood there staring at us, which was really eerie. But I feel like that's a good reflection. We were staring right at them, and they were like a reflection of how we had kind of neared our more instinctual, primitive self, kind of in front of the darkness. They were standing with the darkness behind them, the unknown. So that's one way that you can use it. So symbols as well. Nature offers a lot of good symbols for writing, be it mountains, certain animals, or landscapes. Rivers, I'm using the riverine motif throughout my collection. I Was River Lost. So that's, yeah. Then there's also, I like to look at the question of how we should be amongst nature. So like our relationship with the natural world of which we are a part, and that's a particularly relevant question at the moment with the climate crisis. And you know, it's an important question to ask. And what's the optimal way of engaging with the world around us? I'm also interested in looking at the connection between the forces of nature and the pursuit of happiness. Now that one sounds a bit, I haven't fully figured this one out yet. It's a work in progress. But I think whenever I'm writing about nature in my poetry, it's part of me is trying to figure out like how to reach self-actualization, how to be fulfilled, happy. And I think it's a work in progress because I think there's a kind of inherent mystery in nature that, you know, we're always just trying to figure it out, and there's so much we can't see that it is there in nature, like under the ground, or you know, in a woods that we're on the edge of, or a jungle, or the sea, for example. We see the top, we don't see what's underneath, but we know something's there. So there's a mystery in nature, and that's also a really appealing thing about it for me. I'm going to talk now just briefly about what the winter solstice means to me. So I've always been attracted to its connotations of rebirth, renewal, and rejuvenation, and emergence from the dark. In a way, this redemptive process has occurred time and again in my life, and I'm sure it has in other people's lives. And I think that's a sign of humanity, a sign that you're a human, you know. And I think that's what I really love about the winter solstice. So now to finish, I'm going to read my poem. This is a poem called An Excavation of the Life Course. And it's about, it uses two core symbols, so symbols, kind of natural symbols, as we were talking about, two polarities, to look at the trajectory of the life of a young boy. So I'll read that now. An Excavation of the Life Course. The grave grey limbs of the trees, in their winter sufferings, pointed. The cold wind lifted and shivered to the spot. The boy watched, curiosity hatched, approached the spot, listened. The brown earth pulsed, a convulsion of the world's flesh. The boy's eyes glimmered, reflecting, stars not in sight. He decided to open, fetched, a shovel from the cobwebbed shed, stuck blunt edge into the earth, and dug time, dug seconds, dug the years, till under their layers he found, cradled in the pulp of the earth, a bulk of feathers, black, two marble eyes, blacker than blindness, a beak like a black dagger, hooked and soaked in an oil spill ocean. The boy gawked, recognized omen. Yet to its side the earth let slip, a light, a glowing penetration. A burst of sun possessed the boy, till it reaped a blindness not black, but gold, all illuminating, an enchantment as ancient as blood. It released the boy, dumbly smiling, forgetful, but instilled till his last breath with a potent hunger for sun. And that's me, guys. Thanks. It's been a pleasure to be involved. So thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Taylor, man. That was beautiful. Really appreciate that. That was really wonderful. And I would like to introduce our next speaker. Noel McAlden is a visual artist, a creative advisor, a mental health campaigner and curator, and a cultural broker from Northern Ireland. Can we say hello, Noel? How are you?
Hello, everybody. How are you? And thank you so much to Smashing Times for this lovely opportunity. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. So greetings here from Enniskillen. I'm beside my Christmas tree, which I have all year round because I am Noel. Beside one of the paintings out of the blue. As Queasy said, I am an artist, but I also support other artists and writers and performers. And I really enjoyed what Phelim said there about being inspired by nature. And for me, I'm inspired in my own work by not just the landscape, but the emotional landscape that we inhabit and the space between us in particular, which has really been highlighted during COVID. And for me, this time of the year is so, so important. It's a period for me and for all of us, I suppose, and particularly during COVID, to press the pause button, to reflect, to reimagine, and often to begin again. And I suppose for me, much of the work that I do in supporting other artists and creating exhibitions at a time when galleries and museums and performance spaces are closing, we are relying very much on technology. So all of the things that were said at the beginning, you know, about the importance of technology, the important role that it has, but also the importance of community. And the virtual community is very, very important to me as well, particularly when our families are desperately living apart from us. One of the other areas that I'm passionate about, I've been an arts activist for over 30 years and actively engaged in promoting the importance of the arts, not just for our self-expression, but also for our mental health and well-being. And I have been involved in the Londonderry City of Culture. I've been involved in working with politicians, with church leaders, with children and young people. And also one of the big initiatives we had in the north of Ireland was placing artists and writers and musicians and creatives in children and youth settings from early years right up to the age of 25, because they're pivotal in the importance of I suppose, raising our vibration and our recognition of what the arts can do and liberating us and educating us and encouraging us to be more compassionate. And one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in is in suicide prevention. The creative community is a very fragile community and yet have been hugely resilient during COVID because they've had to be. But I'm also very aware that those of us that have been carers, those of us who have lost family members and loved ones, you know, in many different ways, have been touched and moved as well by those that have died by sudden death. And as a family, like many families, we have been touched by suicide, not once but twice. So I have been dedicating a lot of my time to a number of charities, but one of which is Ohana Suicide, which launched last week in Dublin. And the whole idea was to encourage everyone to step up and do an online course that is approximately 30 minutes long, that equips us with the tools to support those that might be feeling vulnerable or suicidal. And my point is as well is that when we become self-expressed, we are less likely to be depressed. If we engage in music, participate in theatre, participate in creative writing, explore and experiment, and just be childlike, we are less likely to be, I feel, depressed. And those emotions fire us all. And for me in my own work, themes that I use are emotional landscape and precious cargo. And you know, those titles are chosen deliberately because for me, an artistic experience is something to be enjoyed not just by the maker and the creator, but also the participator. And as an artist once said to me, we only create one part of the conversation. True dialogue is created when we have an opportunity to share and discuss and exhibit. So I invite all of you to encourage yourselves to make an exhibition of yourselves and encourage you as well to shine your own light on your own skills and your own gifts.
Thank you very much, Noel. Guys, you could check out Noel and Phelim's work, and it's available on the Smashing Times website. It's a Smashing Times exhibition, Emotional Landscapes. It's a multidisciplinary virtual art exhibition with visual images, poetry, words, music, and discussion. The exhibition is inspired by the artistic response to peace, health, well-being, influences of the pandemic, and themes of health and happiness intersecting with new borders and time and space in the changing landscape. Emotional Landscape features a significant body of work from leading visual artists like Noel and Hina Khan, alongside the visual artwork of Noel and Hina. Their writings of poems from Phelim, and writer, actor, and choreographer Fiona Bond Thompson, who is absolutely excellent. So please check it out. The curator of the exhibition is Mary Moynihan, who will be speaking on this panel later. So hold on tight. So up next, we have someone else who will be up talking, which will be Mary Moynihan, actually. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So Mary, are you there?
Yes, Kwesi, I'm here.
Hello, how are you? Happy winter solstice.
Hi, happy winter solstice, Kwesi, and to everybody on the panel and to everybody watching. I'm delighted to be involved in the Winter Solstice Creative Connections for a Brighter Future panel discussion. And I want to begin by expressing gratitude in case I don't get time at the end. So I just want to thank a number of people. I want to thank all the incredible people in Smashing Times, Frida, Neve, Kira, Veronica, and all the artists and facilitators and production team members who have worked with the company over the past year. All of you, it's been wonderful to work with you, particularly during these difficult times. And I want to thank all our partners. We have a lot of different partner organisations in Ireland and Europe, and a lot of funders and supporters. And I particularly want to thank our audiences and people who are watching and people who have joined with us during the past year, during our work, because I always say that the work we create only exists when it's seen by the audiences. So the audiences are like half of the circle, and it is because of you that what we do is we are able to do it. So thank you very much. And earlier in the year, I wrote an article called The Art of Letting Go. And I'm just going to touch a little on that because this article was a personal reflection on my own experience of COVID. And I am recovering. It is very slow. And like many thousands, this illness is continuing to impact on people's lives. And I have found the experience very life-changing. And like many others, I'm totally in awe of all the medical people and what they do. And also I'm in awe of all the people who continue to provide services during these difficult times. And I particularly want to acknowledge the older generation, because my prejudiced idea of older people changed hugely, particularly when we have this idea of older people being cocooned as if they're behind and being protected, and they need to be protected. But when I was in hospital, I witnessed a number, or became friends with a number of older people who have shown extraordinary courage, because they're not necessarily behind the front lines, they are at the front line themselves. Ordinary people showing extraordinary courage, going for months without seeing their families, keeping up their spirits. They rarely complained despite the difficulties they were going through, and they were just extraordinary. And I think because of this, I did want to mention tonight just the idea of, for all of us to keep going, because by practicing wearing our masks and physical distancing, we are saving lives. And I just think it's important that we all keep going forward. And the world has changed, and there is a lot of grief and a lot of difficulty that has happened. And I think for me, this idea of letting go is something I found personally that impacted on me. And it's not that I'm saying this is what people should do. It's really that I'm expressing my own experience where I had a very difficult time. And I have often tried to be a strong person and to be in control. And I have discovered that really you can be strong and be a warrior by letting go, and by acknowledging your vulnerability and acknowledging your fears and what frightens you, and by sharing that with other people. And the American poet Emily Dickinson, she wrote this 2-line poem that says, "In this short life that only lasts an hour, how much, how little is within our power." And I was very struck by that, because letting go is very important for artists. When we talk about creativity, as an artist, you have to let go in order to be free, because you try to find spontaneity. And in the space of spontaneity, it's not intellectual, it's not academic, it's very instinctive, and it's a very freeing space. And that's important to release creativity. And what's interesting is when you talk about letting go and the idea of being free and creative, you do it because you open up different ways of doing things. So you're, rather than determining what you're going to do next as an artist, you're looking for this way of new possibilities being opened up, so they come to you as opposed to you creating them. And you often hear artists talk about this idea of the work speaking through us, or we're like, I don't know, a vessel or a conduit for something out there that speaks through us. And I just think it's something that maybe we need to talk more about. And when I talk about this idea of possibility, it really is about maybe just being more conscious of what is around us and what is important. And for me, again, it's like being reminded that what is important is the ordinary things in life, the people around us, nature around us. And interesting, when you let go, it is about connecting to yourself, but also connecting outside. So connecting inside and outside. And that's what nature is. Nature is not just outside of us, nature is in us, and we are a part of nature. So again, it's all about the idea of connections and experiencing and connecting to nature, connecting to other people. And I think that's what the winter solstice for me is. It is this idea of how can we connect both on a practical level, but also on a maybe a more, I suppose, spiritual level. And just using this idea of connection and searching in to let go and connect with others. And I'm going to finish by just quoting, because I was asked to talk about the importance of the arts for change and transformation, and for the arts for bringing communities together. But what I'd like to say is, I'm going to quote an American poet, Audre Lorde, and she was very much, her work as a poet was very much about bearing witness to oppression and racism. And it was very much about the personal and the political, but she always encouraged artists and individuals to express your own power from within. So to find that power, so that, as she said, the fears which rule our lives and form our silences begin to lose their control over us. So she talked about this idea of looking within to find your true spirit, and then to share that. So it's not just enough to have the image of that true spirit, but then you must bring that true spirit out into action, into your community. And she really linked this idea of the inner spirit with the political and social transformation. And that's how change happens, by us being ourselves and not being afraid to express who we are, but then also doing something to enable that right for others. So it is about really speaking out for our own rights, but equally speaking out for the rights of others. And I think that's where the arts have a really important role to play, because the arts can help us going forward to envision the new futures and the new possibilities that we want. The arts can help us bear witness to what's happened, but equally help us create those new visions for the future. So I think in this time of winter solstice, it is a time maybe for thinking about nature and thinking about ancient practices. And I loved when Karen talked about Jupiter and Saturn. I think it's absolutely crazy, this idea that two planets are the closest they've been in 800 years, and they create what's a Christmas star. So it's quite symbolic, the idea of this new star shining in the sky, maybe this idea of hope for the future. And I hope then that we can all use the arts as we move forward to maybe create a better society for everybody. So I'm just going to finish up by showing In Time. And Kwesi is one of the actors in Time. It was a pleasure to work with Kwesi earlier in the year. In Time is performed by Kwesi Boyce and Carla Ryan. And it's a poem that I wrote after it was in response to my experience of COVID, but it's really about, I think, a reflection on possibilities, new possibilities, or hopes, or new visions for the future. So I just want to share that with everybody. And happy solstice to everybody. And thank you so much for all your support. And here's hoping for a very happy, new changed 2021. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mary. We will be showing In Time in just a wee mo. But I'd just like to just listen to you speak, Mary, and listening to the other artists, that it resonated a lot with myself as an artist, how nature helped me be grounded from the extraordinary back to the ordinary, to myself. And that oneness and that peace that you feel with nature, whether you're sitting in your garden in the backyard, just looking at nature, or just going on a countryside walk, it kind of just brings everything back down. And it's something that really resonated to me. I remember during the first lockdown, how life was just absolutely crazy. You know, the head is in a tizzy and in a spin, and I was just didn't know what to do with myself. I And as an artist who engaged with young people, I didn't have that engagement, and all these negative things were going through my mind, looking at, stuck on social media, looking at what was happening in America and across the world. And I took time off and I just went into my back garden and started to water my plants, because I had time to plant things and watch it grow. And from that moment, I started to breathe with my plants and observe the simple growth and how it reminded me of an anecdote someone shared with me, that in the darkest, a lot of good could happen. Like, imagine a seed or a bulb in the depths of the soil and the darkness that it is unknown. But if people who's around you nurture you while you're in the darkness, you could come through and emerge and break through that darkness and absorb everything that's good about the world. And it brought me back to who I am. And I didn't feel like I needed to go out and save the world. I didn't feel like I needed to do something super extraordinary, but just trust who I am as an artist and my process and how I engage with my community. And from there, I found peace, in that moment. And yeah, so thank you for this reminding me, and I'm sure it reminded a lot of us about that. We have a little, Noel said, vulnerability is a sign of strength. Thank you for reminding us, Mary. So that's exactly what it is. There's a lot of strength in that vulnerability. So as part of our event today, I am delighted to be launching Smashing Times Creative Connections for the Brighter Future project, which will take place in 2021. Let's go 2021. Creative Connection for the Brighter Future uses creative high quality artistic process combined with new digital technologies to create a body of work celebrating the arts and a piece working with 6 diverse groups from the island of Ireland. This project is funded by the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade Reconciliation Fund and is implemented by Smashing Times in partnership with CAIN, Conflict Archive on the Internet, at Ulster University, and with a range of community organizations on a cross-border and cross-community basis. Dr. Stephen Heron, researcher, academic, culture anthropologist, and community relations facilitator, has been working with Smashing Times for numbers of years, and I'm delighted to invite Stephen to speak. Hey, Stephen.
Hello there, how you all doing?
Happy winter solstice?
Happy winter solstice to you all. First of all, thank you very, very much for the invite this evening. It's much appreciated. Just to give a bit of a background, myself, researcher by trade up at Queen's University in Belfast, where I have been researching veteran transition and the impact of conflict on UK Armed Forces personnel. I think it's quite apt actually to chat a little bit about that tonight, especially with Philip said there a few minutes ago about emerging from darkness. The perception is coming out of conflict, we are emerging from darkness, but for a lot of people who've been involved in conflict, they're re-entering darkness because the memories, the experiences of that conflict becomes part of their everyday life. And they live in a state of fear, in a state of constant hypervigilance, remembering what they went through. And I think that's one of the key lessons we can learn from the arts. The arts provide the opportunity to express those experiences in an informed, different manner, in a way which we may not have otherwise had access to. And I think that's the important thing to remember, that for those who have engaged in conflict, in whatever form that may be, or from whatever side that may be, the memories of that conflict can impact their lives severely long after the bombs and bullets have stopped. And in a COVID era, where communication, interaction, and so on have been reduced, it can exacerbate the problem, the sense of loneliness, isolation, and so on. It's therefore incumbent upon us as researchers, as facilitators, performers, and so on, to find new ways of trying to overcome those barriers and trying to ensure that those people who have suffered in conflict have that light at the end of the tunnel and can emerge from the darkness. And I think that's why it's so apt today to discuss this here. Creative Connections and the projects by Smashing Times have provided that opportunity to allow different groups from diverse sectors, from diverse parts of the conflict, to not just learn more about the other side or the other sides, but to learn more about themselves. I think that's been very, very important. We often talk about cross-community work, cross-community interaction, but it's also important to understand intra-communal issues and understand problems within communities as well as between communities. I think that's something as well that I know with my time with Smashing Times has been quite fascinating, as how communities within communities have learned so much more about themselves and others within their communities. And I hope that moving forward, as we move into hopefully a post-COVID era with increased communication again and contact, that the importance of learning more about the conflict, understanding more about the effects of conflict, and shall I say, not sweeping things under the carpet as we've had a history of doing here, but actually embracing things head on, that maybe we can actually try to find some light at the end of the tunnel for those who have been involved in the conflict, because I would argue for too long, too many have swept these things under the carpet or kicked the can down the road as such, and that does a disservice to those who have been affected quite severely by the conflict. It requires a mature, level-headed approach, and one which actually understands and embraces what we went through, in the hope that we can avoid those mistakes of the past in the future. So thank you very, very much for inviting me along today. Again, congratulations to Smashing Times on this event and for the work they've done through Creative Connections and previous projects, and actually trying to meet head on the challenges faced by conflict zones and those who have been affected by conflict. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Stephen. That was, you know, I agree with you on so many levels about, you know, in inter-community work that needs to be done. Because sometimes the problems gotta get sorted out from in here first, within your own community, within your own self, before you reaching out and trying to, you know, work on conflicts external. And when you mentioned sweeping things under the carpet, I think people, you know, people that I've engaged with are afraid to have those difficult conversations, and they're afraid to be wrong, and to say that they're wrong, because they'll always find reasons to be right about why they feel the hurt and the pain, or why they are angry, or why they are discriminative, and use the language that they use. And it's something that's really, that I hope as we chip away at discrimination, and as we chip away at the injustices that we see, that people will start to have these tough conversations. And that's some of the work that I do with young people, to encourage them to have these conversations, or hear the things that their parents will say at home, and then learn how to, you know, tackle it in a safe manner, in a manner that wouldn't oppress other people, that would help each other, raise each other up to another level, and, you know, to work on these things. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Stephen. So for our last panelist, we have Richard Edgar. Richard is a historian and a author. So Richard, I would like to invite you to have a little chin wag with us. Happy winter solstice, Richard.
Happy winter. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we could hear you. Welcome.
Happy winter solstice to you. As I said, I'm on this here as an author and historian, and I'm sitting listening. You're talking about vulnerability and moving on to stuff like Stephen was pointing out as well. In things like history, I was always looking, people all come along, and history was always around here written about the great and good of society. And for years, I had been researching, what about the ordinary man and woman in the street? What about the ones in townlands, little villages? Forget the great and the good, but how did historic events affect the ordinary person? And again, out of that there, I spent years and years doing this, but maybe 6 years ago, I published my first book, and I felt, as you say, vulnerable. I'm going to actually show people what I've been doing. And my whole expectation was that no one was going to actually take this on. They were going to abandon it. You know, they're going to laugh at me. Look at that fool putting that together. But on writing about local people and about local areas and their history, it really, really suddenly brought communities all together. Suddenly people seeing what everyone shared together, not what drove us all apart, but what we had in common. And then based on the success of that, in the 6 years since, I wrote 6 further books, you know, one virtually every year on different areas. So I've got a collection altogether, and that has expanded out into community talks, into historical walks for schools, and suddenly you're engaging people from everywhere. And it is not to feel vulnerable and worried about what you're doing. There is a degree of, I come in employment, I'm based in science. Everything I've always done was scientific. So to be almost creative and come out and produce a written piece, you felt, oh, but it is out there. And moving forward with things like we're facing now, it has shone a light on lots and lots of stuff that everyone shared together in all the communities. But as part of the research that I have been bringing up with people, as we now face COVID, when you look at one of the things I was doing in my research and bringing forward to people was the flu pandemic of 1918 and how that affected people right across Ireland. And it's similar to what we're having in COVID and how that spread right along, actually along the railway lines in Ireland, whereas men returning home would bring stuff like that home. And as Stephen was saying, on stuff like how on like veterans and pieces like that, what I've found is when you're going through every community and every conflict, no matter where it is, forget the generals, forget the politicians, forget the people at the top. When you get to the very, very bottom, the men and women who stood on the front line, so many of them feel abandoned, no matter what the conflict was. So many of them feel now we've got what they wanted. The governments don't want us anymore. We're surplus to requirement. We're the wastage of what has gone before us. And I've seen that right throughout, as we have been doing a lot of stuff on the decades of centenaries going on in Ireland, and you're seeing that right throughout all of those conflicts, that people afterwards, the man, the woman, the children on the front line, how they feel abandoned and abused by those above them. They feel that they've been hung out to dry, now they're no longer needed. So hopefully, as you're saying, in this solstice, we can shine some light on all of those who feel abandoned by society. And I know from working with Smashing Times, they've come in some of the groups I'm involved in, they have done performances for them. And that has really, the people who attended those, if you'd have said beforehand to them, they would have said, this is nonsense. The arts have nothing to play for us. But whenever they come in, it really, really opened the door for those. They didn't feel that had anything to do with them. that's for someone else. But once it actually they were shown it and offered the opportunity, they're screaming out for more of it. That's what I have found. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we are coming to a close, and I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone on the panel. It's from my observation in the last, even this year, as things are changing, as we are coming to new light, as we are being renewed as humans, that, we will, if we continue to support each other and collaborate and listen to each other, we as a people could rise. And if we just look at what's happening around the world, the ordinary man, woman, and child is continue to stand and fight. It's not what's happening on the top, it's what's coming from the bottom up, submerging from the darkness and trying to break through that light. And we as a community of artists, we will, we have a responsibility to give these people a voice through our songs, our paintings, our dance, our words, our everything. So I want to say, from my heart to your heart, I'd like to keep on encouraging you guys, and through your strength, I feel strong as well. So thank you so much. And before we close up, if anyone have anything to say, it's a short Q&A. But I would like to share, I would like to say, on behalf of Smashing Times International Center for the Arts and Equality, I'd like to thank all of you, and to whoever is joining us today. And also, please keep your eye out on smashingtimes.ie. There's a lot of great things about the panelists here today. And of course, you could take it and share it on your social media. Let people know the great work that's going on. And to close this event, I would like to introduce a unique poem, In Time. Like Mary mentioned, I was so honored to be part of this project. And it's directed by Mary and co-directed with Mark Quinn. And In Time is performed by Carla and myself, and original music composed and performed on violin by Lisa McLaughlin Yemeni. So thank you so much, guys. Happy winter solstice.
In time. In time, we will recover.
In time, there will be a vaccine, and we will be able to go outside.
To work, to the park, to the mountains.
To meet family and friends. To travel to the ends of the earth if we wish.
In time, we will rebuild our world. We will create an equal society where people count. Our friends, family, co-workers, and those who provide services and look after each other. We will get our values right, our priorities straight, and create a world for what counts. People, the planet we live on, and respect and dignity for all.
In time, we will breathe calmly again. In time, we will meet each other in the darkness of a theater space and know again the magic of a connection that is invisible, yet truly felt.
In time, we will hug those we love and have missed. In time, we shall mourn those that have died. In time, we will bear witness.
In time, we will create and imagine. What if?
In time, we will reject governments that do not act on our behalf. We shall create respect for the planet we live on and know our atmosphere is clearing and our world can breathe calmly again. In time, we shall be true to our inner selves, listen to the voice of our inner souls, and follow our heart's desires.
In time, we shall serve ourselves and equally, at the same time, serve others. In time, we will fight the good fight, and at the same time, let go. In time, we will enjoy life and be present in the moment.
And one day, in time,
we will realize
there is no time.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. Guys, we do have a couple of minutes left for Q&A. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask our panelists, please feel free. And welcome to any feedback as well.
Is there questions coming in on the chat, is it? Oh, yeah.
I see it's no open questions as of yet. So what plans do panelists have for 2021? Anyone would like to answer that question? What plans are out there?
Well, I suppose what I can say is that this time has given time to reflect and to explore future collaborations. And I think that's what has really been beneficial, because for many of us artists and makers who are on our own, that reaching out and connecting with other, performers or educators or whatever, it's really a good thing to do. And I suppose I really want to commend the work of Smashing Times, particularly in taking on the whole area of human rights, Mary, because I think that's something that many actually shy away from. And I think, Richard, the point that you were making about the ordinary people, we started out in small communities. I come originally from Mahary, the shores of Lough Neagh, a tiny village, living in Enniskillen now 38 years, and having worked across communities across the island of Ireland, but also, post-conflict, with schools, with artists, with educators, and trying to make sense of a world that is chaotic. And I suppose what I'm looking at now in after COVID, I think it's changed us for life. I think that idea that Mary has mentioned about letting go, and what you mentioned as well, Kwasi, about investing in ourselves, is actually breathing space and time well invested if we continue to make a difference. So I'm looking forward to doing more of that.
Yes. Anyone else? Plans for 2021, or even what do you think is the most important thing to focus on in 2021? Indeed, the collaboration is important. As community is important. I think, even taking advantage of our engagement online, it can bring us together, and it can. We're learning so much more about the world now through social media. Even at that, that's where most of the people are getting the news. So we want to use the power of social media to do some good.
Yeah, I suppose part of my own research interest is in online extremism, which is quite apt given your comment there about social media. And I think that's one of the key things coming out of COVID is the extent to which social media can be a platform for good, but also a platform for bad. The implications of COVID have shown that misinformation can cause a number of issues. And I think moving forward, this is not going to be a public health problem, COVID. It has also shown that we don't understand people, because if we overcome pandemics and so on, it's okay, the public health is one side, but it's actually understanding the people and what people do, how they interact, the motivations, the rationale, and so on. And social media and information supplied on social media will play an ever more important role in that, and how we react both as individuals and communities to the information we receive on social media, I think would be something really, really important moving forward.
Indeed, indeed. I mean, there's a from my observation, you know, there's a lot of you know, cognitive dissonance happening amongst young people, and also not just young people, people like the millennials and the Gen X, because of all that bombardment of misinformation that is working against their you know, what's innate about them. And it's just constant to and fro that yeah, there's going to be a lot of work to be done after you know, as the pandemic passes, because the mental health is really impacted people and how they are seeing the world now. So like you said, let's flood, let's use our opportunity to do more good than and share good information about it. So guys, I'm very mindful of the time. Thank you so much again to all our wonderful panelists. And guys, have a fantastic winter solstice, and I will see you in 2021. See you now. Goodbye.